for the microphone.
All right.
And actually, I'm up here to talk about the Gacy case. Judge Foreman asked me to come and to talk about the ethical considerations for a young 30-year-old lawyer when I took that case. And actually, talking about Judge Foreman, before that Gacy case, I was taller than him. I was 6'4", 4 or 5, and before the Gacy case, we saw that stuff. There are some funny things in a case like that. As many of you in this courtroom know, you've been around for a long time, and you have experienced many different kind of cases. And sometimes, especially those who come out of the prosecutor's office or law enforcement, you see some horrible things. And among those horrible things, sometimes some comedy comes out of it. And there are a few things I'll tell you about the Gacy case. If you haven't read my book, and I have a couple of my books in the back, if you haven't read it, there's some really funny things. One with my dad. And I'll tell you that story in a little while, but the way the case started, at the time I'm a Republican, back in '78, when it started, I was a Democrat. I was a Democratic precinct captain. Actually, there's a joke like that, President Clinton was jogging one morning, and he ran across this little boy. And the little boy had two little cats, two little kittens. And the president said, "Oh, little boys are so cute, what are their names?" The little boy said, "It's Democrat 1 and Democrat 2. Clinton was all excited. He went and told the First Lady, "So you have to come out and jog over tomorrow morning." So they go out, and there's a little boy, the same place, with the two little kittens. And Clinton says, "Hey, little boy, tell the First Lady what your names your kids are." He said, Republican 1, Republican 2. Clinton said, "Hey, kid, yesterday there were Democrat 1 and Democrat 2. Why didn't you change your names?" He said, "Oh, Mr. President, overnight their eyes opened up." so anyway, but all those years ago, I was a Democratic precinct captain, and so was John Gacy. And I had just, and it's sort of like Forrest Gump. There's another story I was telling Brooke earlier about Forrest Gump, and I can tell you that later. I'm starting my new office. I just sent Jim Doherty, who was the public defender of the county, my boss, my employer. I sent him a letter, prepared a letter that I was leaving the public defender's office effective February 1st of 1979. And it was that because I had a bunch of vacation time, sick days coming, and I figured I'll open my law practice in the meantime and then be ready to go in February when I officially leave the PD's office. Now I'm in my new office. It's like December 21st. Like that, December 20th of 1978, getting things ready. And I get a call from my, at the time, secretary, now called legal assistant nowadays. But my legal assistant secretary called and said, "There's a guy on the phone called the PD's office, his name's John Gacy. Says he knows you. Can I give you your new number in your office?" I said, "Okay, I'm not doing anything else, have him call me." So Gacy calls, and I had known him from the Democratic Party over there. And also I was a lawyer for the street lighting district. There's a Northern Park Fire Department, Fire District, Northern Park Street Lighting District, and Gacy was in charge of doing all the lights as a trustee of the street lighting district. And I used to do their budget every year. So that's how I know him. Plus he used to have these big parties. And he was actually the kind of guy everybody knew, everybody in the neighborhood in Norwood Park, they knew Gacy, they knew who he was a clown and everything. So I said, "Sure, have him call me." So I get the call, and the voice on the phone, he goes, all right, I pick up the phone, a little nervous, I didn't have any business, I was hanging pictures on the wall. He said, I go, "Amirante, Sam Amirante." He goes, "Sam, it's John Gacy." "Well, hi, John, how you doing?" He said, "That's always say, hi, how you doing?" I said, "John, how you doing?" And I says, "I'm all right, but I really need a favor. Can you help me out? Can you do me a favor?" He says, "Sure, what do you need?" He goes, "Can you find out why I'm being tailed by the police? They're ruining my business, they're ruining my life. They're intimidating me, scaring me. Can you find out what they're doing?" Now, he didn't call me because he thought I was some great lawyer. I was a Democratic precinct captain. I had been the chief public defender in the 3rd municipal district at the time. And he thought I had clout. He thought I knew these people, and I was going to get him off his back. And so I said, "Sure, I'll call him." I knew Lieutenant Kozenzak at the time. I knew the mayor of Des Plaines, Terry Sullivan, the chief prosecutor out there was my buddy. And so I was asked, I went over and asked him, I said, what's going on, this guy John Gacy? He's a good guy. He used to why the tail. Why the guy's a bad guy? Oh, he's not. He's a good guy. He's a clown. Anyways, he does all kind of things for charity. Everybody in the neighborhood knows this guy. He's Bob Hardwick's best precinct captain, you know. And, you know, he's a good guy. No, he's not a good guy. He's a bad guy. And it's just he had the wrong guy. They're tailing him. And then I read about Robbie Pease, who was his last victim, who was missing at the time. And this kid was a good kid. And I asked Gacy, I him, and he said, I didn't know about this kid? He said, no, I never saw him, never did anything. Then they told me that Gacy was in a pharmacy there, and the kid was working in the pharmacy, and he was talking to John. So a little at a time, the days are going by, and my son was here now at the end. He was in the movie. Have you seen this? Has anybody watched Devil in Disguise? Good. They keep talking about little Sammy. That's little Sammy. Anyway, so he was sick. Sammy was in the hospital. Gacy was following me around. He was going to the hospital and everything. And if you watch the series, the guy playing Gacy is exactly. He looks like him, and that's how he acted. The guy playing Couples really doing a pretty good job too. And the young, good-looking Italian guy there too. He's all right. But anyway, so he's being tailed everywhere, and one thing led to another. And being an abandoned bond, I found myself in the middle of this big case. My first case is private credits. And I really wanted to be. I was talking about the selfies before. I used to work for a guy named John Phillips when I was in law school, and I wanted to be a real, wealthy, big, famous lawyer, famous personal injury, famous medical malpractice. I worked in a hospital I was a bio major, I had a biology degree. I worked at Resurrection Hospital when I was in college. I wanted to be a rich PI lawyer. First case I did was like the most prolific murder case in the history of the world at the time. And so the stories I was going to tell you, I'm going to some of the ethical things I faced at that moment. My dad, pictures a little short Italian guy with a stocky build, no neck, smoking a cigar all the time. He was a newspaper truck driver. Smoked cigarettes. He died of lung cancer. Because he smoked cigarettes and cigars when he was like 8 years old. He did not like lawyers. He wanted me to be a doctor. I was the first one in my family that ever went to college, maybe graduated high school, and then law school on top of it. But he didn't want me to be a lawyer. So that was the first thing. I decided I always wanted to be a lawyer. I like to read about Clarence Darrow. I like to read about Abraham Lincoln and all these things. I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to change the world, all these great things as a lawyer, right? He didn't want that. He wanted me to be a doctor, So I was in pre-med. I got the worst grade in the history of the medical college admissions test. I swear to God, it's in the archives. How low? At the time they scored like 200 to 800. I think I got 201. So if you want to find out how to do a bad on a test, look at it. So I said, I guess it's not for me. I thought about going to medical school in the University of Padua, University of Guadalajara, and I said, I really want to be a doctor. I always wanted to be a lawyer, so I went to law school. Went in the Marine Corps and decided to go to law school. And then, what do? I become I graduate law school, work for John Phillips, big PI lawyer. John, if any of you knew John, remember John, great lawyer, big ego. I couldn't walk in his office. I was his law clerk. I couldn't walk in there without taking my shoes off. He had nothing on his desk, John, ever. We used to do all the work for him. And really, I don't want to be, John Phillips wanted me to go for this. I don't want to be John's little guy the rest of my life. Let me look for something else. Maybe I could be a prosecutor. Well, I went to interview in the prosecutor's office. Didn't really have any political thought to get in there in Chicago. Good guy, couldn't get in. Somebody said, hey, go be a public defender. I said, I don't want to be a PD. They're all a bunch of hippies. They want to turn down all the jails and everything. I don't want to do that. And when I was in law school, I took the side of being the prosecutor. And he said, no, this is really good. And this Italian guy, nice Italian guy, friend of mine, said, come on, there's somebody in the prosecutor's office, or in the PD's office, who is a nice guy. So talk to him, so they get yourself in trial for it right away. Right, so I go see a guy named Nunzio Tisci. Nuns was from Elmwood Park, was the kind of guy I knew, and I went over there and talked to him. He sent me in, and I went up in a PD's office. That was number 2 what I did. First, people wanted to be a lawyer. Now, what do I do? He was in the Navy, I was in the Marine Corps. He used to fight all the time. So now I become a public defender. My dad wasn't happy about that. Now, what do I get? My first case in private practice, everybody in the world hates me. So I'm not only a lawyer, I'm a public defender, and I have the John Gacy case. Now picture this. Picture my dad, this little short Italian guy, stocky built. It's Christmas Eve, 1978. I had been representing Gacy, and then he got arrested. We're going back and forth with the police, and he gets arrested. He's in jail. I had him put in Cermak Hospital, and he's in Cermak Hospital, but he had a lot of privileges over there. It's Christmas Eve. My mom was making calamari. We say calamari, call it calamari. The kitchen, all the Italian stuff at Christmas Eve. I'm sitting there, and the phone rings. The phone rings, and my dad's sitting in one chair, I'm sitting in another chair. There's a table in the middle. Long before cell phones and everything, the phone rings and picking up, it was Gacy calling me from Cermak Hospital. He goes, hey Sam, it's John Gacy. Well, what happened that week, my dad's car, he had this big powder blue Lincoln Continental town car that he saved his whole life for. He loved that car. Somebody wrote on the hood of his car, it was either Elmer's glue or he scratched it in, your son's a queer because only a queer would represent John Gacy. My dad's hot. He's outside, he's got his gun, he's gonna shoot somebody, destroy his car and everything. I go, Dad, calm down. Go to the police, make a police report. You got insurance, don't worry about it, it'll be okay. We calm him down. But if any of you, and I'm sure some of you remember Cup's Night, that event made Cup's column, and it's sometimes Sunday. So Gacy reads about it. Gacy reads about that thing that happened to my dad. Calls and goes, hi Sam, it's John. I read about what happened to your dad's car. Apologized for me. I said, John, he's right here. You could apologize yourself. I take the phone across the field. I go, Dad, it's John Gacy. Let's talk to him. He goes, I don't want to talk to him. Take the phone, talk. I don't want to talk to him. Back and forth, finally back and forth. I give him the phone, he takes it, he's like this. Absolute true story. He's going, yeah. All right, now, sweat's coming down his forehead. His no neck is going into his shoulders. It's no neck at all. Sweating, he's going, all right, yeah, thanks. Gives me the phone back. He goes, you know what this goof said to me? I said, no, what, Dad? He goes, Mr. Amirante, I'm really sorry about what happened to your car just because Sam's my lawyer. But you know, there's a lot of nuts running around out there. Absolute true story. He's the biggest nut in the world. So there's a lot of nuts running around out there. But then that brings me to, before I got arrested, he came to my office. And if you watch that, and seriously, I get nothing out of this series that's on. They really did a pretty accurate job. He came to my office and he told me, after I yelled at him a little bit and screamed at him and told him what a good kid Rodney Peace was, and he was drinking some bourbon, he was smoking some marijuana. He went in telling me, starting in 1972, about all the murders he committed, and how he committed each individual one, and where he put each individual body. And I'm listening to that all night. Like I tell you, it was 6'4" before that. It was like the longest night of my life. And he's telling me all this stuff. And I'm 30 years old. I was only 30 years old. I was a young lawyer. I didn't feel young. I didn't feel like a young lawyer. I had tried cases. I was in PD's office. I tried triple homicides. And here I'm listening to this, this stuff going on about each individual murder. And then at the end of that, he tells me it's not going to stop because he ran out of room in the inn where he was burying the bodies. He had bodies in his crawl space. He had one body underneath the dining room table between the choices. He had a body under the barbecue grill. He had a body in the garage. Then he told me about 5 he threw into the Plains River. They only found 4. There are actually 34 altogether. They never found the 34th body. And that was in the Plains River in Joliet. And here I am thinking, oh my God. I just sat there and I was actually with another guy named Leroy Stevens. And he said because he ran out of room in the end, although he liked the drive, he liked the area where he was throwing the bodies. He thought it was a good resting place for them to go. It was a nice area. But it was inconvenient for him to go out there and drop the bodies off. He didn't want to keep going all the way out there. It was too much. Like the night he was dropped Peace body, he actually slid off the road, and so they helped him get off the road. So it was too inconvenient for him to bring those bodies out to Joliet. So what he told us is he was going to build a second story in his house. He was in a ranch home. He was going to build a second story and start putting the bodies, any future bodies, into that area between the first and the second floor. What the hell do you do? I'm listening to all this. Now, ethically, that's what we're talking about. Ethically, what do you do? I'm sitting, my heart's pounding. I ate so much that night. I mean, there's attorney-client privilege there. You can't say anything to anybody. But he's telling me he's going to commit future crimes. And as an officer of the court, you have to disclose future crimes. But he really hasn't committed a crime. He hasn't planned to commit a crime, but he knows he's going to commit another crime after he killed these 34 boys. So one of the things we did, and if you watch that thing, we told the police if he leaves, shoot his tires out. What we're going to do. Leroy Stevens and I actually had planned to surrender him not surrender him, but have him committed, so we could have time to think about what to do. And I was talking to Terry Sullivan and Bill Kunkel, and going to ask them, maybe, this guy we surrendered, because they got, it's all kind of mixed together, but they got search warrants to get into the house, and based upon a smell, which we filed a motion to suppress on, because they got a search warrant based on the smell of putrefying bodies. I mean, and we've got a lot of things smell like that. It was really kind of a sketchy search warrant. We moved to suppress it, but what judge is going to suppress evidence? You got 34 bodies, bodies. Judge Garibba was not about to do it. Although he retired right after that case, so maybe I should have put a bench trial in that case. But anyway, so that's what he said he was going to build the second floor, and then there was they had the search warrants, and he was doing everything we told him. We told him don't talk to them, we don't do this. But John actually was smart, but he thought he was smarter than anybody in the world, and he wasn't about to listen. You work for me, I don't work for you. I'm going to do what I want to do, and I know what I'm doing. I'm going to be in and out of jail, no time at all. I'm going to talk to them. Then he started putting on this act like he was multiple personalities. Jack Hanley, police officer Jack Hanley, his alter ego was doing it. So it was kind of a fake multiple personality that he was doing. But from the very beginning, with 26 bodies in the house, 27 bodies, whatever it is, and everything else, it was my plan from day one. What are you going to do? It was an insanity defense from day one. This guy's crazy. He's totally potso. And so from day one, it started off as an insanity defense, and that's what we did. There was nothing else we could do. I tried to talk to Sullivan. I tried to talk to Bill Kunkel. Bob Egan was on the case, and Jim Fargo was actually judge now still in Cook County. He was the 7-11 student. No way they would even consider looking for an exchange. Keep him locked up, keep him in a mental institution, study him, find out why he does all this stuff. It's pretty much my same argument was with the jury later on. But the big thing, ethically, you're 30 years old and you just don't know what to do. And then as far as writing the book, later on, writing the book and putting up, he actually wanted his story told. He gave his releases way on, saying he wanted the truth be told. Because a lot of rumors came out about that regarding parts of bodies and everything, and he wanted the truth out there, and so we wrote a book with the truth. We want to set the history straight. We want to make sure history was documented straight, and that's why we wrote the book, Definitive Monster. It's more of a legal history book, a legal trial book than a. It's not a fiction, it's a true story, but it shows what a lawyer goes through, what a young lawyer goes through in a case like this, and how it changed it. It actually helped me when I got in position. I had a lot of judges in this room. When I eventually became a judge and was on the bench, ironically enough, the week he was being executed, Bill Kunkel had gone into private practice, and he had a child molestation case in front of me. And Terry Sullivan, the other trial prosecutor, he had left prosecutor's office. He was in private practice, and he had a kidnapping case in front of me. And that was the same week that Gacy was being executed. That's how things changed. But where it helped me, again, I was so young, and there were so many things involved in that case, especially the victims' families. Seeing these families walk and seeing them all the time. They were having to watch us. I'm sure many of you as prosecutors and judges and defense lawyers, you have to see that. You see that in people, but you learn so much from it. You learn so much about people, so much about trials, so much about what's going on. We had another funny incident that happened. There was a psychiatric exam order during the trial for fitness for trial, insanity at the time, and fitness for sentencing. And Judge Bailey, I don't know if any of you remember, Judge Jim Bailey, on St. Patty's Day, mentioned St. Patty's Day, for he used the word green robe on St. Patty's Day. And he was good friends with Judge Garippo, who was a trial judge. And by the way, Judge Garippo said at the end of that trial, which was really moving, with tears in his eye, he said, if the John Gacy's in this world, we really believe in the system, if the John Gacy's in this world, we get a fair trial, then we could all feel safe, because we could all get a fair trial, which I think is very, very important. So anyway, Garippo calls us in his chambers, and he says, we got a problem. Kunkel, the prosecutors and I were in there, Bob Mata, who was helping me on the case, because we got a problem for visit. He said, I just got this letter from the Psychiatric Institute that Gacy's fit for trial, insane at the time of the offense, and not fit, whatever it is. Anyway, the way the letter was written, he had to let him go. He was going to let him go. Bailey comes walking in, laughing. He goes, I got a hold of stationery from the Psychiatric Institute. Poor Judge Garippo was like, what am I going to do now? And during the trial now, Gacy being a Democratic precinct captain, Bernie Carey, some of you remember Bernie Carey. He was a Republican state's attorney from Cook County. And he came walking in the courtroom one day in the trial, middle of the trial. He was walking in. Gacy sees him. Gacy sees him and goes, hey, what are you doing in here? Well, you don't know how to try a case. You probably never tried a case in your life. You've got very able, competent prosecutors working for you in this courtroom. You're here. Get out of this courtroom. So let's carry off. Garippo looks down on the bench and goes, Mr. Gacy, you're going to be Democratic precinct captain until the end. Anyway, so those are some of the things that happened. The thing with my dad, other things that happened, and there's sometimes I think I get a little PTSD from being there. I've been watching this series lately, and watching it, I almost feel like I'm getting a little feel like I'm back there. By the way, I've been at Judson's Brooks is 88, and they were sworn in the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, 12/8/88. But yeah, you get all those things. You're in all those situations constantly. Bill Kunkel and I, who was a great lawyer, and he sold us that case. He's gone now, Bobby against him. We fought like cat and dogs. We locked horns all the time. Bill was a street fighter. He was a street fighter. I like to think I was kind of a street fighter too. And the jury actually thought we hated each other. And Bill and I and Terry, we were friends. Terry still is. We're feeling well lately, but we've been friends. And when you go through something like that, it's like going through a battle together. It is a battle. You're going through a war, as I'm sure many of you have experienced. You're going through a war together, but then going through that war, even though we're on opposite sides, as long as nobody takes anything personally, you develop a bond. And Bill and Terry and Bob and I, even though we're on opposite sides, through the years we developed this bond, tremendous bond, because you've been through that together, and you fought. We live, folks, in a very noble, and I still believe this. At my age, doing this on both sides of the bench, I still have this belief that we live in a very, very noble and honorable profession. We defend that Constitution every single day. That Constitution that we all love and cherish, we protect and defend. What I'd like to end with, now I'll take some questions. Grab my book, Sammy, Dan, and you know Dan Nicola, Dan works with me. He was a prosecutor for 35 years. And over there is Juliana, one of our interns. I just want to read. Have any of you read my book? Probably not. I'd like to read. My wife says, oh, by the way, my wife couldn't be here tonight. My wife couldn't be here tonight because she's in a psychic. And I said, Deanna, you're gypsies. Psychics are all gypsies. Who do you think? She was funny at fun at the psychic. I said, Deanna, and actually it's a Lake County case I had one time. I represented a kid in court, and his mom was a psychic, gypsy family. She was a psychic, right? So she's all worried about her son. I get back to my office that day, and she goes, Sam, what happened to my son's face? I said, you told me you're the psychic. Anyway, I like reading this because I like the way it's written, and it's close to all of our hearts. And I generally read it to young law students, young lawyers. I think it's very important. And this is why we lawyers do what we do, especially in the criminal defense area. Okay, in 1770, when this country was in its birth throes, the most hated man in America was a man named Captain Thomas Preston. I'm sure some of you historian buffs know this. He was the commander of a small cadre of British soldiers who fired upon a gathering of disgruntled colonists, killing 5. This event became known as the Boston Massacre. The 5 men who died as a result of this event are considered by most historians to be the first casualties of the Revolutionary War. As is always the case, there were 2 sides to the story as to why this tragedy occurred. The colonists, led primarily by Sam Adams, one of the most outspoken writers and revolutionaries of the day, claimed that the British fired upon a peaceful crowd and killed 5 patriots without just cause. The British soldiers claimed that they had fired upon an angry mob in self-defense. There are 2 reasons that will cause good men to abandon their long-standing, dearly held morals, values, and principles and revert to more punitive or more primitive, barbaric practices to resolve conflict. That is when their hearts are filled with anger or when their hearts are filled with fear. Because the colonists were angry over taxes imposed by the British without representation, along with other perceived injustices, and because they were fearful of the sheer might of the British Crown in general, and the soldiers that were there were now being billeted I'll read it up. I think you can hear me. And the soldiers that were being billeted were to quell potential uprisings. In particular, their hearts were filled with both anger and fear. They wanted revenge against the British captain and the British soldiers under his command. Evidence be damned, facts be damned. They wanted revenge that was swift and sure. They wanted the heads of the captain and his men on a spit. One man came forth and said loud and clear, quote, I stand for the law. The man that took the soldiers' case and no other men would stand in their defense was John Adams. John Adams, one of our nation's true founding fathers, a signer of the Declaration of Independence, our first vice president, our second president of the United States, a man of principle. He was also Sam Adams' cousin and friend. His response was said to be this, quote, "Counsel is the last thing an accused person should lack in a free country." He agreed to defend those men in spite of what it might do to his reputation, to his law practice, or to his future plans. He took the case because he believed that free men had certain rights. These were among the heartfelt principles on which he built his life. Those principles are woven into the fabric of our Constitution, which, by the way, I have on my tie. There's going to be a notice. Constitution. I like wearing that in front of juries, kind of a subliminal thing. Into our Constitution. These principles represent our principles as Americans. Every person accused of a crime shall have the right to a speedy and public trial by an impartial jury of their peers. Every person so accused shall have the right to face his accuser in a court of law. Every person so accused shall have the right to counsel. Many men and women have fought and died to preserve those principles, those rights. So keep that in mind when you hear someone say that this crime is too gruesome, or this person is too dangerous, or this issue is too complicated, and to allow those principles to stand. Keep in mind that the very men that John Adams defended were uniformed members of an army of a foreign power that would soon become our enemy. Still, they had their day in court. There is no just cause or justification to usurp the Constitution. Remember the words of Judge Louis Garippo when he said, through tears of pride, quote, "What we do for the John Gacy's, we will do for everyone," unquote. "I will serve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic." This is the oath that we ask our president to take, together with every other person in public service. Every member of our military takes that oath. Every lawyer takes that oath. Every American citizen lives by that oath. It does not say, quote, "I will serve, protect, and defend the popularity polls, or the will of the people, or the frightened masses." It does not say, "I will serve, protect, and defend the Constitution unless." There are no conditions or qualifications. When a harried and nervous people jump in front of microphones and scream and rail that we should suddenly do something in direct contravention to that upon which we have based our very system of justice, when they tell you that we should abandon that which men and women have fought and died for, and which have worked so well since the beginning of this beautiful experiment that we call America, in favor of that which we have always criticized about lesser countries. Kindly invite them to pound sand. I think that's, thank you. We in this room, in Jefferson, live by those words. And I am so honored, and so proud, and I know many of you in here, I'm so honored and so grateful and proud that, and humbled that you've asked me to be here. So Judge Foreman and all of you in here, thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.